And our little girl Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checker. And you know, the kids, like all kids, love the dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we're going to keep it. And I want to say this to the television. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. And our little girl Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checker. And you know, the kids, like all kids, love the dog. And I just want to say this right now, that regardless of what they say about it, we're going to keep it. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I burned everything I've got. 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 President's a crook. You gotta know, I'm not a crook. No. Well, I'm not a crook. No. Whether it's a crook. President's a crook. President's a crook. People have gotta know. Gotta know. Gotta know. Well, I'm not. People have gotta know whether or not. Well, I'm not a crook. I'm not a crook. I'm not a crook. Gotta know what their president is. Not their president or not. Well, I'm not a crook. 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 Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. President's a crook. Well, I'm not. Whether or not their president's a crook. Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Not a crook. No. People have got to know. People have got to know whether or not. Whether or not they're crook. Crook. I'm not a crook. I know. People have got to know. Well, I'm not a crook. 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 Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook.
I don't pay attention to rumors. I don't pay attention to movie magazines. They don't read them because they're all junk. And, no, I don't mean to put anybody's job down. I'm talking about they have a job to do, and they got to write something. So if they don't know anything, they make it up, you know. So in my case, they make it up. But I hear rumors flying around. I got sick in the hospital. Well, I was, you know, in this day and time, you can't even get sick. You are strung out. Oh, by God, I'll tell you something, friend. I have never been strung out in my life, except on music. When I got sick here in the hotel, I got sick here that one night. I had 102 temperature. They wouldn't let me perform. From 3 different sources I heard I was strung out on heroin. I swear to God, hotel employees, Jack, bellboys, freaks that carry your luggage up to the room, people working around, you know, talking, maids. And I was sick. I was, you know, had a doctor, had the flu, and I got over one day. But all across this town, I was strung out. So I told him earlier, and don't you get offended, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking to somebody else. If I find or hear the individual that has said that about me, I'm going to break your goddamn neck, you son of a bitch. That is dangerous. That is damaging to myself, to my little daughter, to my father, to my friends, my doctor, to everybody, my relationship with you, my relationship with up here on the stage. It is dangerous. I will pull your goddamn tongue out by the roots. Thank you very much. Come on. Let me get out of this mood.
I'm here to pick up Amy.
She's still getting ready. Come in. How do you plan on supporting my granddaughter, young man?
I'm only 17, sir.
What can provide her with the brightest future?
A home?
Wrong. Gold.
Gold?
It's never too early or too late to secure your future with gold. Gold is always valuable, liquid, and as smart a buy as you might ever make. Who do you trust, son? Roslyn Capital, that's who. Roslyn Capital does more than just sell gold. They give you expert advice on how to secure your future. So buy your gold where I buy mine, Roslyn Capital. Call them today for your free guide to owning gold.
Ready?
Young man, what's the most important thing to remember?
To secure my future with gold through Roslyn Capital?
No! To make sure Amy's back by 11. Call Roslyn Capital and tell them Gordon Liddy sent you.
Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight from my heart on a subject of deep concern to every American. In recent months, members of my administration and officials of the Committee for the Re-election of the President, including some of my closest friends and most trusted aides, have been charged with involvement in what has come to be known as the Watergate affair. Today, in one of the most difficult decisions of my presidency, I accepted the resignations of two of my closest associates in the White House, Bob Haldeman, John Ehrlichman, two of the finest public servants it has been my privilege to know.
Well, good evening, everyone. We are gathered here to talk about a great many things tonight. Yes, we've got a lot to get through, but there's one person who's going to be the interlacing thread in all of these stories we're going to talk about tonight. I don't know who that could be.
Sock it to me?
That's right. We're gonna suck at the old tricky dick. But not just that. We're gonna talk about the king of rock and roll. The CIA. The mafia. How to properly make a peanut butter and nana sandwich. Rat fucking. G. Gordon Liddy. What did Nixon mean that Watergate was going to open the Bay of Pigs?
Open that scab, I'll blow up in the whole Bay of Pigs thing.
What did he mean by that? We'll find out. But first, if you're feeling generous and would like to put a shekel in the coffers, then buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. It helps keep this show on the air, blah, 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 blah. You know the rest, you know what to do. Buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. Good evening, Corey Floxer Show, James Campisi, See No Evil, Starving Autist, Charles and Chad, Dead Game, Nash Albertson, Evil Ian, Lost Chaos Synthesizer. Hello, good evening, everyone. You didn't know that Nixon said, did you know that Nixon bowled? He put a bowling alley in the White House. I bet you didn't know that. There's a lot about Nixon you probably don't know. Come to find out that I asked around because people asked me. I've heard a few questions. Hey, Spirit. I've noticed you have a Nixon button on your overlay. You put in little Nixon quotes in your intros. What's the deal with Nixon? Well, I'm glad you asked. I also have a Goldwater sticker. Nobody asks about that, but nobody really knows who Barry Goldwater is, but one day we'll talk about Barry. I also have an Irgoon sticker, but I don't think a lot of you are ready to talk about that one. But what's the deal with Nixon? And I queried around, what do you know about Watergate? Because most people seem to just know Nixon broke into Watergate, Democrats mad, Nixon bad. And that's about it. So what really happened? What was so important about Watergate? Why was Watergate so vital in taking down Nixon's administration? Well, we'll find out. There's a secret history that you probably don't know about in Watergate. And it has to do with the whole Bay of Pigs thing. But we'll find out more about that. But first, let's get into it, shall we? So our story starts with Elvis. Elvis loves guns, he loves cars, and he's also extremely generous, and he loves giving guns and cars and homes. And it's Christmas. It's Christmas, y'all. And Elvis is buying a lot of guns, a lot of cars, a lot of homes. Probably a lot of drugs, too. But we'll get to that. Nevertheless, Priscilla is riding his ass as women do. Oh, Elvis! Elvis, you spending too much money. He probably is. He's probably buying. He's buying people fucking houses and cars. He probably is spending too much money. Nevertheless, you don't tell the king of rock and roll that he's spending too much goddamn money. No, sir. No, sir. And Elvis is not happy about that. Now, understand something about Elvis. Elvis has a whole mafia built around him. Elvis has never had to do anything for himself his entire adult life. Right? Anything the king wants, the king gets. You dig? And the Memphis Mafia took care of the king. So one thing you have to understand about Elvis as we approach this story is that Elvis can't even make his favorite sandwich. Literally. The man cannot make a sandwich for himself. His favorite sandwich is not difficult to make. We all know what it is, right? Right? Say what it is in the chat. What's Elvis's favorite sandwich? Right? Simple ingredients. A peanut butter and banana and bacon, right? Peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwich. Nash Albertson says a peanut butter and Demerol. A peanut butter nanner and bacon sandwich, right? No, wrong. Wrong. Now, should you make a peanut butter nanner and bacon sandwich? Oh yeah, you should definitely make that. It's superior in every objective way. But if we're being canonically accurate, the bacon is a lie. You were lied to. Elvis didn't eat no peanut butter nanner and bacon sandwiches. He ate peanut butter and nanner sandwiches. And what goes into the making of a peanut butter and banana sandwich? Some bananas, some bread. The whiter the better. A stick of butter and a cup of peanut butter. Creamy. You fry it in a pan. Elvis wasn't allowed to use the stove, y'all. But I want to emphasize the bacon's a lie. Don't believe me? Don't take my word for it. Let's listen to Elvis's own personal chef, his own cook.
That morning when I walked into the dining room, I spoke. I said, "Good morning." He said, "Good morning." I said, "What are we going to have for breakfast this morning?" He said, "Fried peanut butter and banana sandwich." And I looked at him. I said, "What?" He said, "Fried peanut butter and banana sandwich." I said, "I never heard of it." The first time I went in, fixed the sandwich and put it on the tray and brought it back, that wasn't right. His father was sitting there, and he said, "Mary, I'm going with you and help you. And let's see, maybe both of us can get it right." I said, "Okay." And he said, let's toast the bread first. So we toast the bread and then spread the peanut butter on it and sliced the bananas and put on it. And put them into the skillet and kept turning them with the spatula. And turned them till they got heated all the way through. Then I take them and cut them, put them on the platter and taking them back to me. And he said, now that's what I want, that's right.
That's what I want. That's right. No bacon. Did you see any bacon? There wasn't no bacon. That was a peanut butter and nanner sandwich fried up in a skillet with some butter. Now, the hardest part of making the Elvis sandwich is that you have to pre-toast the white bread before you create the sandwich and fry it up in the skillet with a stick of butter. That's the most difficult part, is toasting the bread. So understand, for the sake of this story, y'all, Elvis isn't allowed to use the stove or the toaster. He can't spread fucking peanut butter. He can't use a knife to cut a goddamn banana. The man is incapable of doing anything for himself. And yet, despite all of this, somehow, he's so pissed off by the fact that his wife told him he's spending too much money that he goes off by himself. It's the first time that Elvis has ever gone off by himself. All he's got is a credit card. Elvis doesn't carry cash on him. Okay, understand that. People around him take care of his every need for him. So Elvis gets a limo, goes off with just a credit card. I also assume, like some pills and, Elvis stuff. And a gun, because this is very important to what happens next. Elvis takes the gun everywhere he goes, right? And Elvis goes to the airport, because that's where you take a gun, is on a plane. And Elvis gets a ticket with his credit card. Somehow he's able to manage that. Elvis is on a fucking mission. A mission from God. So he buys a ticket. Buys a ticket for Los Angeles. Before he gets on the plane, they tell him, I'm sorry, sir, but you can't bring your gun on the plane, right? Nobody tells the goddamn king of rock and roll he can't bring his piece on a goddamn plane. So Elvis storms off. And the pilot of the plane comes out and personally says, I'm sorry, Mr. Presley. It's not a problem. He understood. You don't tell Elvis he can't carry his gun on a plane in 1972. So Elvis gets on the plane. Strapped. And on a layover, he phone calls Jerry Schilling. Now, Jerry Schilling is Elvis's buddy. He's out in Los Angeles. He's working for some film company. He's got some job out there. Elvis is on a layover. Phone calls Jerry Schilling, wakes him up. Hey, it's me. Meet me at the airport. I'm coming in hot. All right. Can't say no to the king. Jerry Schilling's like, the king. Got to work in the morning. I got a job. I'm working with this movie studio. Nah, fuck that shit, baby. Round up the boys, we're on a fucking mission. You don't say no to the king. So Jerry Schilling picks up Elvis at the airport. They go to one of Elvis's houses in Los Angeles. And on a little stopover at this house, Elvis has to pick up something very, very important. Very important. Very special. Now, you know, if it's Elvis, there's only two things be very important, very special to picking up. It's either drugs. Now, drugs wouldn't last long. You just left them somewhere. So it can't be drugs. So it's gotta be guns. And that's right. So Elvis goes to this house in Los Angeles. He picks up a very special item. A vintage World War II Colt 45 pistol with silver bullets. I don't know, because maybe he thinks Nixon's a vampire. I don't know really what's going through Elvis's head right now. That's why this is amazing. Right. Drugs, you say. I don't know how drugs would influence any of this. So Elvis, Jerry Schilling are at this house. He grabs this gun. And Elvis says, we're going to Washington. That's right, baby. We're going to Washington. Pack your bags. Get your things. Now, Elvis has got another buddy, Sonny West. So he tells Jerry Schilling, call up Sonny West. Get him over here. Get the boys together. The boys are going to Washington. It's like, King, Sonny West, King, he's getting married this weekend. King, Sonny West is getting married this weekend. Like shit he is. Call that son of a bitch, get him over here. The boys are going to Washington. And so, that happened. And the three of them go to Washington. Now, on this flight to Washington, a lot of things are going to happen. Now, first of all, remember, Elvis doesn't carry any cash with him. So, they only have about $500 in cash that they were able to grab from the other house in Los Angeles. That's all they've got for this trip. It's $500 in cash. But Elvis don't give no shits. Elvis is over here talking to a guy who just came back from Viet goddamn Nam. And he's listening to his story about how he just came back from Vietnam. And the king turns to Jerry Schilling and he says, where's that $500 at? And Jerry Schilling says, but king, that's all we got. This is all we got for the trip. Bullshit. This man went to Viet goddamn Nam. He served his goddamn country fighting the communist threat to America. You give this man that $500 right goddamn now, or I'll rip your tongue out of your goddamn throat. No, okay, calm down. Calm down, King. So he gives him the $500. Because that's the kind of guy Elvis is. Generous to a fault. But there's someone else on the plane that Elvis starts talking to. There's a senator, Senator George Murphy, pictured here. Pictured here with the, I don't want to call him the hero, but I don't want to call him the protagonist. What do we call it?
Sock it to me?
The main character of this evening. So, Senator George Murphy. He's a Republican senator from California. Pictured here with Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Also Republican politicians from California. I know, weird, right? Times were different. And Ronald Reagan and George Murphy are both from the movie industry and Republicans turned politicians. I know, weird. Before Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so, Elvis is having a conversation with Senator Murphy about the communist threat to America. How the communist invasion is taking over and subverting our great nation. And so this inspires Elvis. I guess all of this inspires Elvis somehow, because he grabs some stationery from the airline and he pens a masterpiece. Allow me. Dear Mr. President, first, I would like to introduce myself. I am Elvis Presley, and I admire you and have great respect for your office. I talked to Vice President Agnew in Palm Springs 3 weeks ago and expressed my concern for our country, the drug culture, the hippie elements, the Students for a Democratic Society, which would later go on to be the Weatherman, baby, the Black Panthers, etc. They do not consider me as their enemy, or as they call it, the establishment. I call it America, and I love it. Sir, I can and will be of any service that I can to help the country out. I have no concern or motives other than to helping the country out. So I wish not to be given a title or an appointed position. I can and will do more good if I were made a federal agent at large, and I will help out by doing it in my way, through my communications with people of all ages. Now, first and foremost, I'm an entertainer, but all I need is federal credentials. I'm on this plane with Senator George Murphy, and we have been discussing the problems that our country is faced with. Sir, I'm staying at the Washington Hotel. I have 2 men who work with me by the name of Jerry Schilling and Sonny West, and I am registered under the name of John Burroughs. I will be here for as long as it takes to get the credentials of a federal agent. I've done an in-depth study of drug abuse. Let that sink in. I have done an in-depth study of drug abuse and communist brainwashing techniques, and I am right in the middle of the whole thing where I can and will do the most good. I'm glad to help just as long as you keep this very private. You can have your staff or whomever call me anytime, today, tonight, or tomorrow. I was nominated this year for one of America's 10 most outstanding young men. That will be this January 18th in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. I'm sending you this short autobiography of myself so you can better understand this approach. I would love to meet you, just to say hello if you are not too busy. Respectfully, Elvis Presley. P.S. I believe that you, sir, were one of the top 10 outstanding men of America also. I have a personal gift for you. Oh, put a pin in that. Which I would like to present to you, and you can accept it, or I will keep it for you until you can take it. Should be framed with the Constitution. Now, Elvis has an ulterior motive. Elvis has an impressive collection of badges. Elvis is very into law enforcement and collecting law enforcement paraphernalia and law enforcement badges. And Elvis has found out through the grapevine that there's a specific federal drug enforcement agent badge that he wants to get his hands on. And you don't say no to the Kang, baby. But it's not about just collecting badges. Oh no. Them stinking badges. Elvis has other ulterior motives. In becoming a federal agent, he also believes that by having this badge and these credentials, it will allow him to carry as many guns and as many drugs as he wants anywhere. So, it's at this point I want to stop for a moment and slow down, back up, reflect on where we're at here. Put this all in perspective. Now, this all started because somebody told Elvis, Elvis, you're spending too much money. And Elvis's reaction to this was, nah, fuck that. Don't tell me I'm spending too much money. I'll show them. I'm gonna go to Washington, D.C. and get the president to make me a federal agent so I can traffic as many guns or drugs as I want. And this decision was in no way informed or made by narcotics in any way. So let's meet some other characters in our cast tonight. Because we have to know a little bit about some of the people in the Nixon administration if we're gonna talk about the Nixon administration. Also, pay attention to some of these people, because by the end of tonight, all of them are going to prison. Now, Nixon's not an easy person to get to. He has a lot of subterfuge in his own government. A lot of dirty tricks. And so H.R. Bob Haldeman and John Ehrlichman are called the Berlin Wall, both for their German-sounding names, and for keeping Nixon divided from anybody who wants to see him. Pictured in the middle is Dwight Chapin. Now, he's a Whitehouse assistant. He will also go to prison. All of these guys protect Nixon from outsiders. And Elvis wants to see Nixon. So Elvis shows up at the White House. He hand delivers his scribbled note that he wrote on American Airlines stationery, because Elvis doesn't mail something. You don't mail something if you're the king. You hand deliver that shit. And so Dwight Chapin writes a memo to Bob Haldeman. Attached, you will find a letter to the president from Elvis Presley. As you're aware, Presley showed up here this morning and has requested an appointment with the president. He states that he knows the president is very busy, but he would like to say hello and present the president with a gift. Wonder what that could be. As you're well aware, Presley was voted one of the 10 outstanding young men of the next year. So I'm sure you're well aware, in Elvis's footnotes, he was elected one of the 10 outstanding young men of the year. And based upon the work that he's done in the field of drugs. The thrust of Presley's letter is that he wants to become a federal agent at large to work against the drug problem by communicating with the people of all ages. He says that he's not a member of the establishment and that drug culture types, the hippie elements, the SDS, and the Black Panthers are people with whom he can communicate with since he is not part of the establishment. I suggest that we do the following. This morning, Bug Krogh will have Mr. Presley in and talk to him about drugs and about what Presley can do. Bud will also check to see if there's any kind of honorary agent or at-large or credential of some sort that we can provide for Mr. Presley. After Bud has met with Mr. Presley, it is recommended that we had Bud bring Presley in during the open hour to meet briefly with the president. You know that several people have mentioned over the past few months that Presley is very pro the president. He wants to keep everything private, and I think we should honor this request. I've talked to Bud Krogh about this whole matter, and I think it would be wrong to push Presley off onto the vice president, since it would take very little of the president's time, and it can be extremely beneficial for the president to build some rapport with Presley. In addition, if the president wants to meet with some bright young people outside of the government, Presley might be a perfect one to start with. And as you can see, Haldeman writes in the margins You must be kidding. But nevertheless, he approves of this meeting with Elvis and the president. But while Elvis is waiting to see the president, he gets a hankering for some donuts. He gets a hankering for some donuts, and Elvis can't purchase his own donuts. So he sends Jerry Schilling in, go get me some donuts. Now, as the story goes, there's different versions of this. I don't know what to believe. But the popular version of this tale is that, look, we're in Washington, D.C. It's in the hood. This is a local hangout for some urban youths. And, you know, it's not every day that somebody in a limo comes by wearing gold rings, buy donuts in the hood. So these urban youths, they come out to see who this is. And they're like, oh shit, it's Elvis. Who else could it be? And then they see that Elvis is packing heat. So Elvis is out in the parking lot of this donut shop, and I imagine that it went something like he's showing off his piece. He's like doing RoboCop spins with it. That's how I picture it anyway. That's what I'd like to believe happens. But anyway, he wins over these urban youths. And then the king gets his donuts. And he's off to the White House. Now, as you might remember, that pin, Elvis has a gift. Elvis comes bearing tribute for Nixon in the form of that vintage World War II Colt 45 pistol with those silver bullets. So Bud Krogh is getting this meeting together with Elvis, right? And he gets a call from Clint Hill, who's a Secret Service agent. And so Clint Hill calls Bud Krogh on the White House phone, and he's like, hey, look, Elvis is here, but we got a problem. Elvis brought a gun to the White House. And so they're trying to figure out what to do about this, because they can't allow Elvis to bring a gun into the Oval Office. It just can't happen. So unfortunately, Elvis has to surrender his gun. So he surrenders the gun over to Secret Service agent Clint Hill. Now, if you're a JFK aficionado, where have I heard that name before? Oh, that's right. That's Clint Hill. That's probably the most famous photo of him. So Elvis turns over his gun to the guy who jumped on the back of Kennedy's car How reassuring it must be if you're Nixon, right? This is going to be kind of a theme. This is going to be kind of a theme of what we're talking about here tonight. How reassuring it must be to be protected by the Secret Service agent who didn't protect Kennedy. How reassuring. So, Elvis turns over his gun to Clint Hill. Clint Hill, yes, that Clint Hill.
I heard a sound from my right rear. I was on the left-hand front of the follow-up car. As I began to turn to my right toward that sound, my eyes crossed the back of the presidential car, and I saw the president grasp at his throat and lurch a little bit to his left, and I realized something had happened. And I got off the car as quickly as I could and ran to the presidential car. By the time I got there, 2 more shots had been fired, and he had been hit in the head. When I slipped when I first tried to get up on the presidential car, it took me 4 or 5 steps more in order to get up there. And in that time, Mrs. Kennedy was out on top of the trunk attempting to grasp part of the president's head that had been blown off and had fallen into the street. And I grasped her and put her back in the back seat and placed my body over the top of she and the president.
He was also having an affair with her. Little known fact. I mean, her husband was off, like, fucking everybody. Yeah, little known fact. That's the big rumor. Clint Hill and Jacqueline Kennedy were having an affair. You know what that is.
Weird.
Also, surprise, bitches! This is also a JFK stream. Because if you think that Watergate and the Kennedy assassination don't have something in common, well, we'll find out. They have more in common than you think. You might actually learn more about JFK by looking at Watergate than you can looking at JFK. But we gotta get back to Elvis. So Elvis comes into the Oval Office bearing gifts. He's carrying all his Elvis stuff. Looking fucking cool in his shades with an armful of crap. And he comes in, he's got photos of his family and his kid. Little Lisa Marie, R.I.P. And he's showing pictures of his kid to Nixon. I'd like to think that in this one he's saying, Mr. President, I have a present for you. It's a gun! Yeah! So, and here's Nixon. Here's Nixon admiring Elvis's cufflinks.
I got some nice cufflinks there, King. Oh, very nice.
That's Bud Krogh looking on. And so the president and the king are having a good discussion. There's no recording of this, so this all comes from Bud Krogh's recollection. But Elvis tells Nixon, Mr. President, I'm just a poor boy from Mississippi. All I want to do is serve my country. And I have done in-depth research into the drug culture. I myself have sampled many drugs. I'm also very familiar with communist brainwashing activities. I'm deeply disturbed by the hippies and the drug culture. And I think I can do the most good. Because I'm the king, baby. The youth will listen. The youth will listen to me and hear what I have to say. But the only thing I'm lacking is that Federal Drug Enforcement Agency badge, you dig? If I was to obtain the credentials of a federal drug enforcement agent, then I could traffic as many drugs and guns as I needed to help fight the communist threat. And who did Elvis specifically call out as being the biggest propagators of the communist threat to America? Who did he tell Nixon to look out for? The Beatles. That's right. The Beatles. The Beatles are the greatest threat to America with their subversion and their communist brainwashing tactics. Elvis volunteered to inform for the FBI, 1970 memo says. Elvis Presley offered to become an FBI informant in 1970 and said that the filthy, unkempt appearances and suggestive music of the Beatles were responsible for the many problems of the United States was having with the young people. According to an FBI internal memo released yesterday, the memo adds that Presley also advised that the Smothers Brothers, Jane Fonda, and other persons in the entertainment industry and their ilk have a lot to answer for in the hereafter for the way they have poisoned the young minds by disparaging the United States in the public statements and unsavory activities. Also, hello D-Rec, hello Job411, hello CZ Chat, hello James Campese. Thank you for being here, everyone. Elvis ratting out the Beatles to the FBI so we could get that Federal Drug Enforcement Agency badge. I'll tell you. So Jerry Schilling, Sonny West, they come in, they meet Nixon. The boys on a mission to bring a gun to the White House. And of course, that's how we get this famous, infamous photo. One of the most requested photos from the National Archives. That's how Elvis met Nixon. A true American story, if there ever was one. And yes, if you're wondering, Elvis left that day with that Drug Enforcement Agency badge. All I need, baby, is the credentials of a federal agent. I'm sure Nixon looked over at Bud Krogh. Well, I'm sure there's something we could work out. I'm sure we could get something for Mr. Presley. And they did, by God. Bureau of Narcotics, Elvis Presley. The White House even sent him a letter back thanking him. Dear Mr. Presley,
It was a pleasure to meet you in my office yesterday. I want you to know once again how much I appreciate your thoughtfulness in giving me the commemorative World War II Colt 45 pistol encased in the handsome wooden chest. You were particularly kind to remember me with this impressive gift, as well as your family photographs, and I am delighted to have them for my collection of special mementos. With my best wishes to you, Mrs. Presley, and your daughter, Lisa. Have a happy and peaceful 1971. Sincerely, Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon.
Sock it to me?
Yeah, what's the deal with Nixon? I don't think most people were even alive when Nixon was the president. What do most of us even remember about Nixon? Other than meeting Elvis. What's that other thing that everybody remembers Nixon for? Oh yeah, that other thing.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes. But in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
President?
Yes, sir.
And what does it usually mean when a president or a politician tells you that they're not a crook? So was Richard Nixon a crook? Was he literally Hitler? Let's find out. And what's that whole Watergate thing about? Yeah, about that. For those of you in the audience too young to remember what Watergate was, or is, the Watergate fiasco that brought down the Nixon administration had to do, in brief, because it's a lot to go over. This is all skimming the surface tonight. But it had to do with Nixon cronies getting caught breaking into Democratic headquarters at the Watergate. And then, subsequently, these recordings of Nixon pressuring the CIA to tell the FBI to slow down their investigation into the Watergate break-in as the smoking gun tapes. You might have heard about that, right? Well, that's what that was. That's what brought down the Nixon administration, the smoking gun tapes. The tapes that showed, because Nixon had recording devices installed all throughout the White House. He was paranoid. Yeah, because everybody's lying to him, and he needs to back up what people are saying to him. Also, he needs blackmail. So, Nixon ironically gets taken down by his own recording system. But as we'll find out, it's all a setup. You know it's a setup. But how? How did that happen? Why? And what's this got to do with the other thing? You know what other thing. Let's take a closer look at those smoking gun tapes. So, in these tapes, he's telling Haldeman, this is what I want you to do.
This is what I want you to do. All right?
When you go in and talk to the CIA, because he's trying to get the CIA to slow the FBI's investigation into Watergate. So he's telling he's telling Haldeman and Ehrlichman,
when you get in there, you get in with these people, you say, look, the problem is that this will open the whole Bay of Pigs thing, and the president just feels that without going into details, don't lie to them to the extent to say that there's no involvement. Just say that there's this is sort of a comedy of errors, bizarre, without getting into it. Let's just say that the president believes that it is going to open up the whole Bay of Pigs thing again, and because these people are playing for keeps, that we should call the FBI in and say that we wish for the country. Don't go any further into this case, period.
Bay of Pigs. Bay of Pigs was like over 10 years ago and happened under Kennedy's administration. What does Watergate have to do with opening up the Bay of Pigs? And yet,
to have this Hunt, this Hunt fellow, he knows too damn much. And he was involved, we know that. And if this gets out, that the whole, this Cuban thing, that's a fiasco, and that could make the CIA look bad. It's gonna make Hunt look bad. That's likely to blow the whole Bay of Pigs thing, which we think would be very unfortunate for the CIA and for the country at this time, and for the American foreign policy, and you just better be tough and lay it on him.
So he keeps grilling Haldeman with this phrase over and over.
When you go in there, tell him the president says this is gonna open up the whole Bay of Pigs thing again. If you go any further with this investigation, you're gonna open up the whole Bay of Pigs thing. This Hunt guy, he knows too much. This Hunt guy, that will uncover a lot of things. You open that scab, there's a hell of a lot of things that we feel would be very detrimental to have this thing go any further. And it involves these Cubans and Hunt and a lot of hanky-panky that we had nothing to do with ourselves.
What is he talking about? That the Watergate investigation is going to blow open the Bay of Pigs. And it involves Hunt, these Cubans,
and a lot of hanky-panky we had nothing to do with. I wash my hands of the whole fiasco.
What is he talking about? I feel like there is more to Watergate than is in the public narrative, than generally is talked about. I think it has to do with this whole Bay of Pigs thing. So what is that about? Why is Nixon telling Haldeman, go tell the CIA that if you go any further, it's gonna open that whole Bay of Pigs thing? What's he talking about?
Nixon told Haldeman to threaten the director, Richard Helms, that if the FBI went ahead, his agency's worst humiliation, the 1961 fiasco at the Bay of Pigs, would be dragged up again.
He said, when you get in the people, say, look, this is the president now saying to me, look, the problem is that this will open the whole Bay of Pigs thing.
My purpose, my primary purpose, as is clearly indicated by the tape, and I don't dispute it at all, I wanted to stop the investigation, if possible.
The president has asked us to tell you that he wants, I think I said Dick Walters, to contact Pat Gray at the FBI and explain to them that exploring these Cubans and their ties and all that sort of thing, and the money source, may lead into all sorts of other things that we shouldn't be getting into, and that they should not go any further in that exploration.
At that point, Haldeman carried out the president's ploy. He warned Helms that Watergate could reopen the Bay of Pigs scandal.
Helms, a typically cold as a cucumber, icy, super spy type guy, came totally unglued.
Frankly, to this day, when I think back on that meeting, it's a long time ago, but it didn't seem to me that any of these things made any sense much.
He leaped up in enormous excitement, concern, and panic and said, this has nothing to do with the Bay of Pigs, and there's no problem about the Bay of Pigs, and the CIA had nothing to do with this, and on and on and on and on. And he finally calmed down, and they agreed that Walters would go talk to the FBI.
This has nothing to do with the Bay of Pigs. Haldeman, when you listen to Haldeman's tell it, Helms is standing up. This has nothing to do with the Bay of Pigs. Helms is saying, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So what is he talking about? Haldeman suggested that Nixon used the phrase, the whole Bay of Pigs thing, as a coded reference to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. He wrote it was the president's way of reminding Helms, not so gently, of the cover-up of the CIA assassination attempts on the hero of the Bay of Pigs, Fidel Castro, a CIA operation that may have triggered the Kennedy tragedy and which Helms desperately wanted to hide. The whole Bay of Pigs thing was code, Nixon's code, for the Kennedy assassination. So following that trail, if you look further into Watergate, you're going to open up the whole Bay of Pigs thing. The whole Kennedy assassination. That's what Haldeman thought. But don't take my word for it. What if I told you that Nixon himself said that, and we're gonna listen to it, and Moose have an exclusive, because you're not gonna find this anywhere else. So buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. This is only here. I went to the Nixon archives. I downloaded this shit. I edited it. I clipped out the important parts. I did a lot of digital tooling to make this even listenable. This is the best and only version of this you're going to hear on the internet. It's still not the best quality, but let me walk you through what you're about to hear. So after this meeting with Ehrlichman and Haldeman, Richard Helms from the CIA comes in and he meets with Nixon. And Nixon says,
Now, let me get to this delicate matter. This thing you were talking to John about. I think I can clarify it and maybe put it into a different perspective, because you're probably wondering what the hell this is all about. Now, I just want you to know that, I am very aware of, what the Russians have done, and what, the United States has done, and what was ours and what was not ours. And I know about the coup in Iran. I know about the coup in Guatemala. And, I approved of both. And I know about the whole Bay of Pigs thing. Under Eisenhower, I approved of that too. Damn good plan, would have gone through. Should have gone through. But my knowledge of this has nothing to do with the inner conflicts of the CIA, you understand? It's just that I have to know for the truth, and secondly, I have to know for protection's sake, for defense. The who shot John angle. The who shot John angle. I need it for the who shot John angle. Did Eisenhower do it? Did Johnson do it? Kennedy do it? I need to know for national security. To uphold the dirty tricks department.
I love that he calls the CIA the dirty tricks department.
The dirty tricks department. I need to uphold the dirty tricks department. But I need to know for the who shot John angle.
I think that's pretty clear. So, only place you're gonna hear this, in Nixon's own words.
Let me come to this delicate point that you've been talking to John about. John is talking to you about it, and I know that you were talking to him about it. And I think maybe I can perhaps put it in a different perspective than John was able to. You probably wonder what the hell it's all about. So first, with regard to the interest, it depends on the item. In terms, for example, of the Cuban confrontation, it has to do with events that will be quite clear within a few weeks. That is, I just want to be sure that I am totally aware of everything we have ever dealt with the Russians in the past, and what they did, and what we did, and what was promised, and what was not promised, and so forth and so on, and how it worked. Now, when you get to the dirty tricks department, which is the part we're really concerned about, and I know what happened in Iran. I also know what happened in Guatemala. I totally approve of both. And I also know what happened in the plan of the Bay of Pigs under Eisenhower. solely to know the facts. Second, with regard to, I need it for a defensive reason. The who shot John, is Eisenhower lying, Johnson lying, Kennedy lying, Nixon lying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. May become, not by me, but may become a very, very vigorous issue. If it does, I need to know what is necessary to protect, frankly, the intelligence gathering and the Dirty Tricks Department, and I will protect it. Listen, I've done more than my share of lobbying to protect it. I will do it. I believe it's totally right to do it.
Yeah, like Lost Chaos Synthesizer says, blackmail is such a negative word. We prefer leverage.
Look, I'm fully aware of who shot John.
So, yes, there is some leveraging going on between Nixon and the CIA to slow this investigation. Look, if you go any further, you're going to open up the whole Mary Biggs thing, the who shot John angle. There's also this agreement, between the FBI and the CIA that if the FBI is encroaching upon a CIA operation, that the FBI will back down. He's trying to be like,
look, the FBI is encroaching upon an FBI operation, or a CIA operation, so you're going to open up a whole can of worms by looking into this.
Nash Albertson says, I blame Bing Crosby. Well, some strange names are going to get brought up into this here in a minute.
Who shot John angle.
But if we're gonna untangle this tangled web, we have to learn more about who Trick-a-Dick is. For those of you too young to remember, which is all of us, Richard Nixon was vice president to Eisenhower. And in that time that he was vice president, he had very close relations with the CIA. Used them as a little bit of his personal watchdogs. And so what else was going on at the time? Well, in Cuba, Batista was in charge, but not for long, because the CIA initially is backing Fidel Castro's revolutionary overthrow of the government. Initially. But then, America starts putting pressure on Fidel. Look, we will support your coup with caveats. We're the boss, because we're America, and we rule. Deal with it. Let me put it to you this way.
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, like, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
Look, national defense, totally cranking. And so in the interest of bitchin', totally rad, national defense, Fidel, we need you to not make any alliances with the Soviet Union or China. In other words,
don't trust China. China is asshole.
In other words, don't trust China. That's all you gotta do. Just don't trust China. and we'll support your coup. But Fidel's like, no, fuck you. Don't tell Fidel what to do. I will make alliances with whoever I want. And so the CIA goes, well, he has to die. Now, let's talk about some of the things that come from Cuba. Because when Fidel takes over, he nationalizes all of the industries in Cuba. And what are Cuba's national industries? There's the sugar. The sugar. The coffee. And the gambling. What? That's right. That's right. Fidel kicks out all of the casinos. And those casinos are making a lot of money. A lot of money for a lot of people. What kind of people? These kind of people. Gangsters with hard R's. People who don't fuck around. Lest ye find out. And Fidel Castro is fucking around. It's fucking around with gangsters with hard R's who also are in charge of Cuba's other national exports. Drug trafficking and human trafficking. So Fidel Castro, you are messing with some very powerful people.
The mafia made a deal with Batista to allow a vast assemblage of gambling casinos, narcotics operations, vice operations to be developed in Cuba. And just shortly before Castro took over, the mob's base in Cuba was perhaps the equivalent of Las Vegas and Atlantic City today.
When Castro took control of Cuba, he seized all the American casinos and all their assets.
Once he closed the casinos, he closed up really the main source of funding for Cuba.
The bright lights of Havana's casinos dimmed for good, and the mob fled to safer shores, like the Gold Coast of Florida and the neon strips of Las Vegas.
But that's not the only place that they fled, because they also fled into the arms of the CIA. Hello, Manu. Sorry, I had a cough. Now, the mob and the CIA also had a relationship going back to World War II. And so you're messing with some very powerful people. People like Meyer Lansky. I hope you know about Meyer Lansky, because if you don't, let me just throw some names out there that are going to become important. And important to stories and streams down the road when we get into other aspects of this whole Bay of Pigs thing. Understand that Lansky, he's connected with Lucky Luciano and the West Coast Mafia that's going to become very important in future episodes. He's connected with Bugsy Siegel, Mickey Cohen, you know, guys out in Hollywood and Las Vegas connected with the mafia. People like Frank Sinatra. What? Yes. Oh, yes. All of these names are going to become important later on in a future episode. But Lansky's the shit. Hang on, I have a different video of Lansky. Let me pull it up.
Meyer Lansky's life reflected the entire history of organized crime in America. He came to New York from Russia with his parents when he was 9 years old. He grew up in poverty with the men who would later become the godfathers of the mob. Because he was a Jew, he could never become a member of that inner circle of the mob, the Italian mafia.
So he killed them all.
Yet he was more powerful than any of them, and he had more influence in shaping the mob's destiny than any other single individual. He was always small for his age, and he learned to survive by his wits. He was good with numbers, and after he had proven himself during Prohibition, the mob tapped him as its consultant. It was Lansky's job to develop casino gambling. The mob provided the muscle and the original money. Lansky provided the brains, and casinos sprouted in Havana, in South Florida, Las Vegas, the Bahamas. His power was challenged frequently. Bugsy Siegel, Lansky's partner during Prohibition, built the first Las Vegas casino hotel and then tried to run it as his own. 2 bullets in his face brought management back under Lansky's control. In 1957, Albert Anastasia, the most feared man in the New York Mafia, tried to move Lansky out of Havana casino gambling. Instead, Anastasia was shot out of his barber's chair in a New York hotel. Lansky's power was secure. Through the 1960s, Lansky directed from Miami the skimming of cash from Las Vegas counting houses. Indicted for skimming $14 million in 1971, he fled to Israel. Eventually, law enforcement heat was so great, Israel deported him. No other country would take him, and he returned to face trial for contempt of court and income tax evasion. With good lawyers and poor health, he managed to never spend a day in jail. He was found not guilty of tax evasion, and the other charges were dropped. After open-heart surgery, he went into semi-retirement. But he was still the senior member of the board, the man the mob came to for advice. By the time he died, he may have been worth $1 billion, but he was so good at hiding and manipulating money, most of his personal fortune will never be found. He was a survivor who outlived his contemporaries because he was smarter and more cunning, because he understood human nature and knew how to exploit it. In his circles, he was known as a man of his word. A deal was a deal, and he never talked. With him, the mob felt its secrets and its investments were safe. I'm Clarence Jones, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
I ain't saying nothing. You hear? Yeah, even Israel wouldn't take him. And yet he ran some of the finest establishments in all of Havana.
They were places that were patronized by the finest people and had seating capacity, some of them as high as 800 people. And some of the finest people of the United States patronized these places. Also, your big charity balls were held there. And usually every year, the proms from that area were held there. Their fathers and mothers. There were not any nukes in some corner or somewheres. They were known all over America for their food and entertainment.
The FBI had to watch as Lansky went about his daily life, strolling through Miami Beach, having coffee in the afternoon, and going to clubs at night. One act he saw over and over was Jewish comedian Jackie Mason, who came frequently to Miami to perform.
I couldn't get over that this top man from the whole mafia is following me around. I knew he wasn't trying to kill me, so I figured he must be enjoying my act.
After shows, Mason would join Lansky and his friends at their table.
He loved the power. I could see he loved the power, because when people sat around him with that worshipful look on their faces, you could tell that he knew he was the boss and he acted it. I used to say to him, how much money do you really have? I swear to you by my life, I'll keep my mouth shut. And he would laugh and change the subject, or give me a hug, or give me a kibitz, and I could never find out anything.
How's that?
No talking.
You can't say anything about what happened inside
I can say a lot, but I'm going to reserve that for posterity.
What do you think of this libel suit against Penthouse that's going on in California?
I have no opinion on that.
You think your testimony is important to this trial?
You better ask them. I won't say any more to you, so don't waste your time.
What has Meyer Lansky been doing with himself these days?
Just what you see.
Which is?
That's another question now.
Keep him busy?
I don't know if I keep busy or not, and I care less.
I don't know nothing. Keeping busy? I don't know. Don't ask me no questions. Yeah, Meyer Lansky fucking rules. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also point out that his wife also fucking ruled. Teddy was really fucking cool.
Now look, go away from me, I'll kill you!
Lansky's wife, Teddy, could be as wild as he was mild. A Miami television reporter called her godmother. She spit in her face.
Fellas, get yourself a woman like that. So let's talk about somebody else. Somebody else who's very affected by Castro taking over, kicking all of the mob, I mean the casinos, out of Cuba. The other important name to unraveling this story, Santos Trafficante. So Santos Trafficante is another important figure within the mob. And if you've been taking notes, he's linked with Carlos Marcello. That should be a name that you have written down in your notes. The godfather of New Orleans organized crime, Carlos Marcello. New Orleans. Where have we heard about New Orleans before? So Santos Trafficante is connected with New Orleans organized crime, but he's also connected with another important figure who will also play a part in future episodes. Santos Trafficante is very connected with Jimmy Hoffa. Boy, I wonder who killed Kennedy, huh? It's just a mystery. We'll never know. It's too complicated to figure out. Guess we shouldn't even bother. It's a mystery wrapped inside a riddle, inside an enigma. You're never gonna figure it out. Because it's not like Jimmy Hoffa didn't have a bone to pick with the Kennedys or anything.
Santos Trafficante, the last survivor of 3 underworld figures involved in alleged CIA plots to kill Fidel Castro, appeared before the House Assassinations Committee under subpoena today, but Trafficante took the 5th. Bernard Shaw reports.
Trafficante appeared reluctantly before the committee, fully aware of the unsolved murders of 2 other underworld figures mentioned in previous congressional testimony about assassination plots. Sam Momo Giancana was shot in his suburban Chicago home 2 years ago after Senate investigators tried to question him. And the hacked-up body of John Rosselli was found stuffed in a floating oil drum last summer near Miami. Today, the man who once ran syndicate gambling in Cuba showed up without the documents he was ordered to bring, and 15 times he refused to answer questions ranging from whether he had prior knowledge of plans to kill President Kennedy to whether he was visited in a Cuban jail by Jack Ruby. Early on in the questioning, Trafficante's lawyer objected to the lights, cameras, and radio reporters and had them removed from the committee room. The committee decided to keep Trafficante under subpoena, and Chairman Louis Stokes warned that by not answering questions, Trafficante was flirting with a contempt of Congress citation.
Boy, I wonder who killed Kennedy. Guess we'll never know. Guess we'll never figure it out. The Mafia. The YouTube Mafia doesn't want me to tell you about this. They're trying to keep me down. They're getting to buy me a coffee. I appreciate it though, guys. Thank you very much. You can help out too. buymeacoffee.com/mooseheaven. If it works. If it doesn't, I don't know. Try later. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, the mob has a bone to pick with Fidel Castro, and they have connections with the intelligence agency going back to World War II with people like Meyer Lansky. And so, the Central Intelligence Agency proposes Operation 40 to seize control of the Cuban government with counterintelligence groups composed of Cuban exiles. It was approved by President Eisenhower in March 1960 and presided over by Vice President Richard Nixon.
Sock it to me?
See where this is going? I hope you do. So we're equipping Cuban refugees as a guerrilla force to overthrow the government of Cuba and its Prime Minister Fidel Castro. Based. That's what we should be doing now. I'm just saying, we have all of these Chinese pouring over the borders en masse. I'm just saying, put them to some good use. We could be arming them and training them and brainwashing them and being like, hey, do you hate communism? Remember how bad it was in China? We'll arm you, we'll train you. And like overthrow the government of China. I'm just saying. We could be putting it to some good use and also, you know, make me director of the CIA, please. Operation 40 was not only involved in sabotage operations, one associate of the group, although never a member, Frank Sturgis. Surprise, bitches! This is a Frank Sturgis stream. He's gonna be about as much of a main character in our story tonight as Nixon and Elvis. Frank Sturgis, American badass. The man's a cold-blooded fucking killer. He's the real fucking deal. Frank fucking Sturgis. Remember that name, it's going to come up. Frank Sturgis told an author, this assassination group, Operation 40, would, upon orders, naturally assassinate either members of the military or the political parties of the foreign country that you were going to infiltrate, and if necessary, some of your own members who are suspected of being foreign agents. We were concentrating strictly in Cuba at that particular time. The group sought to incite civil war in Cuba against the government of Prime Minister Fidel Castro. When Operation 40 failed in accomplishing its goal, well, we'll find out about what happens next. But, fun fact, you can play Operation 40 in Call of Duty Black Ops. But Frank fucking Sturgis. What happens next? What happens next is that Richard Nixon calls up an old friend of his. He calls up Howard Hughes. Yeah. That Howard Hughes. That Howard Hughes. I said get in. What? You're probably saying, yeah, Richard Nixon calls up Howard Hughes because Howard Hughes has actually been secretly funding Nixon for a long time, as we'll find out. Now, what do people most know Howard Hughes for besides the other thing? Besides the other thing.
The world's largest plane and storm center of a congressional inquiry awaits tests at its dock in Long Beach, California. Builder of the monster, Howard Hughes, stormy petrel of aviation, surveys the 320-foot wing of the Colossus, whose weight is 200 tons and whose length is 200 feet. Sections of the mammoth are as high as a 5-story building. Mr. Hughes' descent gives you an idea. On the taxiing deck, Hughes takes a last look as the monster dwarfs everything in its vicinity. There are 100 instruments to check on this panel alone before the test begins. A test that is to startle the aviation world. In the cockpit, Hughes sits at the controls. Incidentally, it takes 26,000 pounds hydraulic pressure to operate these controls. The air giant starts to move, driven by her 8 3,000 horsepower motors. And now for Mr. Hughes' surprise. As the enormous craft approaches her 95-mile-an-hour takeoff speed, the pilot lifts her onto the step and holds her there as she races through the choppy sea. And with the final drive of her engines, 200 tons are airborne, 5 months ahead of time. 70 feet off the water, she stays for a mile. $23 million worth of airplane has answered a lot of committee questions. It can fly.
Also, I want to call attention. Corey Flockstra, make Frank Sturgis a playable character in Call of Duty. Fuck yes. Fuck yes. But Howard Hughes, he was the Elon Musk of his day. Making Spruce Gooses and shit. Goose heaven, you might say. Spruce Goose heaven. But what you might not remember about the Spruce Goose was, oh yeah, it was subject to a Senate inquiry about war contracts and war profiteering.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes?
Didn't you get some $8 million in 1946 as a termination of a war contract?
Well, it certainly didn't go into this $15 million.
Well, I'm just asking you whether you didn't have war contracts in 46.
Well, Senator, there is a bureau set up here in Washington to terminate contracts, and it's not the intention of that bureau to pay a profit. It's the intention to pay the cost of the manufacturer in terminating the contract. Isn't that right?
Wasn't there any profits in that termination?
Well, sir, if they were, they are included in my war contract figure, which, as I said to you, shows a loss. I did not make any profit on my war contract.
But you made $15 million during the years in which you were operating under government contract.
Well, Senator, I'm not even sure that's a correct statement, but the fact remains that if I made $15 million, I made it selling oil well tools and beer, grand prize beer, to people down in Texas, and I don't think that's the subject of this investigation, and I don't think the public should be led to believe that I made $15 million on war contracts when I did not. Now, furthermore, Senator, if I didn't make a little money somewhere, how could I put $9 million into the flying boat?
So, some eccentric Elon Musk weirdo, war profiteer, funding secret black ops, what? Nah, that's never happened before. What? So Howard Hughes has been a secret financier for Richard Nixon, and his entire political career going all the way back to a loan that he gave Nixon's brother to establish Nixon Burger. And it's from there that Richard Nixon's political career begins. So Richard Nixon's very close with old Howard Hughes, and he calls Howard Hughes up for some money, and Howard Hughes puts it in a slush fund. So they create a slush fund, and that slush fund is used to finance Brigade 2506, a CIA-sponsored group of Cuban exiles for a military overthrow of the Cuban government. So the plan is, we have a lot of Cuban exiles who hate Castro. Let's train them, arm them, and send them back to Cuba, to overthrow Fidel Castro. And if all of this sounds vaguely familiar to you, like you've heard this before on a similar stream, it's because in New Orleans, Guy Bannister, former FBI agent, and David Ferry, notorious pedophile, you should all be familiar characters and names to you. If not, go to that JFK Streams playlist, because they were also training Cuban exiles in New Orleans for an invasion of Cuba. And who was associated with those guys? Oh, that's right, Lee Harvey Oswald. So we got all of these badass anti-communist Cuban exiles ready to go fucking overthrow Fidel Castro. And the mafia's behind it, the CIA's behind it, Richard Nixon's behind it. I approved of it. But there's a problem. There's a little bit of a problem, and that is it's an election year. Oh, spaghetti-o. So, America has a choice to make. Who are they gonna sock it to?
Sock it to me?
Are they gonna sock it to Richard Nixon, or are they gonna pick this young guy, Kennedy? So, let's go back in our Wayback Machine and to the election of 1960. What was the platform that Richard Nixon was running on? Eisenhower Doctrine, foreign policy. That's what.
Mr. Nixon, what is the truth about our ability to fight the growing menace of communism?
Well, first, we must recognize communism for what it is. Mr. Khrushchev understands only strength and firmness. To apologize to him just means weakness. Our next president must show clearly that America won't stand for being pushed around anywhere in the world. When Mr. Khrushchev says our grandchildren will live under communism, we must answer his grandchildren will live in freedom. When he says the Monroe Doctrine is dead, we say the doctrine of freedom applies everywhere in the world. The only answer to communism is a massive offensive for freedom. Freedom from hunger, from disease, and a victory for the ageless hope of people everywhere. Freedom from tyranny.
Vote for Nixon and Lodge, November 8th.
Now, if you Gen Xers in the audience had difficulty understanding what Nixon was saying, let me explain it to you this way.
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, like, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
Okay? National defense, totally cranking, radical bitchin' trip. Fuck those commies. But Kennedy's over here. I respectfully disagree. I am going to be harder on communism.
Senator Kennedy, on another subject, communism is so often described as an ideology or a belief that exists somewhere other than in the United States. Let me ask you, sir, just how serious a threat to our national security are these communist subversive activities in the United States today?
Well, I think they're serious. I think it's a matter that we should continue to give great care and attention to. We should support the laws which the United States has passed in order to protect us from those who would destroy us from within. We should sustain the Department of Justice in its efforts and the FBI, and we should be continually alert. I think if the United States is maintaining a strong society here in the United States, I think that we can meet any internal threat. The major threat is external and will continue.
I will be harder on communism. The internal communist threat is a problem that we must address. Ow. Those of you old enough to remember back in 1982 that Nixon and Kennedy also had the first televised debate. Which the media playing a role in deciding politics? I've never heard of this before.
Would be rather difficult to cover them in 2.5 minutes.
This is the debate that Richard Nixon could never live down.
And which party do we want to lead the United States?
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement?
I have no comment.
Going head-to-head with Senator John Kennedy in 1960, then Vice President Nixon looked sweaty and uncomfortable compared to a tan, relaxed Kennedy. In recently uncovered audio recordings, Nixon lamented that performance in a candid conversation with his White House Chief of Staff, Bob Haldeman.
Remember, even on the first debate, we made a mistake in not or we had prepared it work like hell, but we didn't have running the goddamn schedule so hard. We didn't learn from the others. We're never going to come to again.
In the business, that's what we like to call foreshadowing. So, Kennedy wins the election, inherits all of these trained Cuban anti-Castro guerrilla fighters. Let's fucking go. Let's go overthrow Fidel Castro. And so it's on. Kennedy approves of the operation, and so the invasion of the Bay of Pigs happens. However, what needs to happen, what the CIA needs to happen, is for this to spark a full invasion of Cuba. This won't work unless there's a full military invasion of Cuba, and they know it. So the idea is to draw the military into this invasion. But Kennedy holds back any additional naval and air support from the invasion. And so the invasion of the Bay of Pigs doesn't go off as they had planned. And all of these anti-Castro Cuban exile guerrilla fighters that the CIA has trained, a lot of them end up getting captured. A lot of them end up getting killed in firing squads. The whole thing's a fucking embarrassment. And think about who has invested a lot of money and time and effort and resources and has their interest wrapped up in overthrowing Fidel Castro at this point. Who has the interest of seeing this happen, right? Not just the CIA, but the mob. What happens when you piss off the mob? And so who's left with their dick in the wind? Who has to go out in front of the American people and try and explain this embarrassing disaster? This guy.
Well, I would say that there are a good many Americans in the last 15 years who've served their country in a good many different ways. A good many abroad. Some of them have lost their lives. The United States government has not felt that it was helpful to our interests, and particularly in the struggle against this armed doctrine, which we're in struggle all around the world, to go into great details. Let me just say about these four men. They were serving their country. The flight that cost them their lives was a volunteer flight, and that they, while because of the nature of their work, it has not been a matter of public record, as it might be in the case of soldiers or sailors. I can say that they were serving their country, and as I say, their work was volunteer.
They were just volunteers, guys. Just volunteers. Those four pilots, they totally not our guys, volunteers. We are not militarily involved in an invasion of Cuba for realsy, totally swearsy realsy. Meanwhile, in Cuba, the communists are declaring this a fucking victory. A victory for communism.
Es un símbolo para todos los pueblos oprimidos. Playa Girón es la primera derrota del imperialismo en América Latina, pero también es una de las primeras derrotas del imperialismo en escala mundial.
Che Guevara's out here declaring it a victory, and it kind of is, because it pushes Cuba further into an alliance with the Soviet Union. And so what else happens in the fallout from the Bay of Pigs? Well, Kennedy fires CIA Director Allen Dulles. I'm sure this will in no way come back to bite him in the ass. I'm sure Allen Dulles will not have anything to say later about, you know, the Warren Commission or anything. Right? And also, it pushes Cuba further into the arms of the Soviets and escalates to the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think you know what happens next. So Johnson gets sworn in. Viet goddamn Nam escalates. And in 1968, Nixon wins in a goddamn landslide. He's on a fucking roll, right? What could go wrong? Turns out a lot. Because the Nixon administration is being fraught with all of these internal scandals of leaks coming out. And oh my God, the press go after a sitting Republican president. I've never heard of such a thing. You're gonna see a lot of parallels. So anyway, the big leak that we're gonna talk about is the Pentagon Papers. Do you wanna know how we know the Gulf of Tonkin was a bullshit psyop? It was from the Pentagon Papers. And so, mostly these are embarrassing details about the Vietnam War, mostly having to do with embarrassments that happened under the Johnson administration. However, the press is having a field day embarrassing Nixon's administration for these leaks. The public is very anti-war because of the fucking counterculture fucking press. And so Nixon's getting blamed for all of this Vietnam shit, that a lot of this happened under Johnson's administration. Nevertheless, the press is blaming Nixon, having a field day. The press, the media blaming a sitting president for shit that happened under the last administration. I've never heard of such a thing. So Nixon's got to stop these leaks. It's looking bad. He's getting blamed for a lot of Johnson shit. Nixon goes to J. Edgar Hoover J. Edgar Hoover is like on his deathbed practically. So Nixon goes over to J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover, you gotta do something about these leaks. And Hoover's just telling him about, I ever tell you about it, Eleanor Roosevelt would never shut her goddamn mouth. I had to tell that fucking bitch all the time to shut her goddamn mouth and stop spilling national defense secrets. In other words.
So let me explain it to you this way. National defense is like totally cranking. I mean, it is just awesome to the max. I mean, like, it is primo, radical, bitchin' trip.
I did that so I could take a drink. So Hoover isn't any fucking help. Can't go to the FBI. FBI's the ones fucking leaking all the documents. FBI's no fucking help, so what's Nixon gonna do? What would you do? What would you do if you're Nixon? You gotta take matters into your own hands. That's what. Right? So he goes to the CIA, probably not the best people to go to. And what, a sitting president taking bad advice from people he shouldn't be taking advice from? What? I've never heard of this before. So Nixon goes to the CIA, and the CIA tells him, look, you want to take matters into your own hands and stop the leaks, we've got this guy. Just put him on Whitehouse staff. Just put him on payroll as an advisor. His name is E. Howard Hunt. He's CIA. He's retired. He's not doing anything. He's just writing spy novels in his spare time. He needs a job. He needs something to do to keep him busy. So get him on White House payroll. He was just happened to be the liaison between the Cuban exiles and the CIA. See where this is going? See how we're untangling this, and it's not that hard to understand? Gee, I wonder who killed Kennedy. So, Nixon, for better or for worse, hires on E. Howard Hunt onto the White House staff, and E. Howard Hunt has this group that he calls the Plumbers. Why? Because they're gonna stop leaks. And who's one of the plumbers? This guy, G. Gordon Liddy. FBI knee breaker and turned conservative talk show host. So Hunt and Liddy devise a plan.
Hunt and I devised the entire plan in concert, using our mutual backgrounds and experiences. We sat down, we said, okay, well, what do we want to do and what do we want to get? Well, we want to get political intelligence. We also want to, if we can, be disruptive. Hence, knowing that it was going to be down in in Miami, when it would be terribly hot there, we thought, okay, if we sabotage the air conditioning in there, that's going to make them very uncomfortable, and they're liable to make mistakes. We were going to have prostitutes try to attract those who were attractable and get them into a good mood with liquor and what have you, and have them report back to us what they said. We're looking for a typical thing with young men, mid-level responsibility, seeking to impress a pretty girl, would say, well, no, I've really got a very sensitive job, and if you don't think so, you just say, no, tomorrow such and such is going to happen. You check, and you'll see that it did. You're not going to get that kind of information back. Matter of fact, the initial plan even had us able to intercept transmissions from their campaign aircraft.
So they have all of these crazy plans to stop these leaks, right? That involve prostitutes and leverage. Tapping into planes while they're in midair. All sorts of fucking wild and crazy shit. Now, if you can't tell already, Nixon's kind of being set up, right? If you can't smell the setup, there's a setup happening. But what are these men up to? Rat fucking. That's what they're up to. There's an election coming up. And these guys are rat fucking. What's rat fucking? Dirty tricks. The dirty tricks department. Dirty tricks in the name of winning an election. And these guys are up to some rat fucking. Rat fuckery. So, they got this plan to break into Democratic headquarters at the Watergate. And what are they looking for? Well, here's the part that nobody tells you about, okay? There's some things that they're looking for specifically. First of all, they believe that the Democrats are running a call girl ring out of the Democrat headquarters. What? Unbelievable. The Democrats run a call girl ring out of their own headquarters. What? Unbelievable. So, they're looking for the little black books and the names. And I want you to consider too that if they're running prostitutes out of the Democrat headquarters, you know goddamn well that they're doing Epstein shit too. Think about that. And Nixon wants that info. He wants those names in those little black books. Why? Blackmail. What's the other thing that they want to find? They want to find the dossier on Fidel Castro. They want to see what they know about any attempts to assassinate him, who was behind it. And they want to find any papers related to the money history of Howard Hughes. And how it could be used against Nixon in the upcoming election of '72. Rat fucking. So these guys are up to some rat fucking and they get caught. Now, if you can't tell, they're supposed to get caught. It's a setup. That first guy you're seeing, James McCord, he's part of the committee to re-elect the president. Or CREEP. That's the real acronym. Whoever came up with that, just first off the bat, right there, needs to be fired. So McCord is from CREEP. But he's also a CIA mole of this operation. His job is to place the bugs, to place all of the bugging equipment. But what they don't know is that he's putting in bugs for the CIA, right? And then putting in the bugs for Nixon. So the CIA is getting the better version and getting the information first. And that's what they're doing when they're recording Nixon, yada yada. You see how this is going. This is McCord with the one of the bugging devices later. And so he's there as a mole for the CIA. And these guys get caught. So who else is there? All of these Cuban exiles. And a guy in the middle named Frank Sturgis. What? Frank Sturgis from Call of Duty, the playable character, Frank Sturgis? Now, before we go any further, let me unmuddy some waters in case you want to go down the JFK rabbit hole. I want to don't waste your fucking time. These guys are not the three tramps. The three tramps are obfuscation. Don't worry about it. It's not important. It's there to distract you. These guys are not the three tramps. So don't even fucking go down that rabbit hole there. I saved you a bunch of time. But Frank Sturgis is kind of a fucking important guy, because where did we hear about him before? Oh, that's right. He was part of that anti-Castro overthrow Cuba thing. He was Castro's right-hand man. What? If you doubt Frank Sturgis is not a fucking badass, that's him standing on a fucking mass grave. Frank fucking Sturgis. No, he's a badass. The dude's a fucking killer. So he's a vitally important character. Let's learn more about him.
After Castro seized power, he was hailed first as a conquering hero, then branded a communist turncoat. Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis fought side by side with Castro, while secretly acting as a CIA informant. He was among the first to discover Castro's true colors.
A Russian submarine one evening came off the coast of Cuba in Oriente province and unloaded a couple KGB agents. I did take pictures of these two individuals. After I took the pictures of the communist, these two agents and so forth, when I found out definitely that he was dealing with the communists and with the KGB. And I definitely really wanted to go ahead and do something to kill him.
After early attempts to kill Castro failed, the CIA turned to more devious methods. Enter Marita Lorenz, Fidel Castro's mistress.
By chance, I went on my father's cruise ship, the Berlin. The last stop on this cruise, West Indian cruise, was Havana. And on this cruise, I met the Prime Minister of Cuba, Dr. Fidel Castro Ruz.
She was 19 years old and a real beauty. Fidel, naturally, with a 19-year-old girl, hey, you know, he'd crawl over a snake to get to a 19-year-old girl.
At 19, she was old enough to have an affair with Fidel and young enough to be brainwashed by the CIA.
I was asked to try to recruit her because she would be a very good asset, intelligence-wise. And I nurtured her along, and I finally did, where I got her in a position to poison Castro.
They kept threatening me since they trained me that I wasn't good for anything else, that I had to do it for national security reasons, that otherwise there would be a war.
She failed in that. And then there was two other attempts.
I saw him playing his music and lying on the bed, smoking a cigar. He said, "Did you come to kill me?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You can't kill me. Nobody can kill me."
Though the CIA had been unable to liquidate Castro, they pushed ahead with plans for an all-out invasion. The Bay of Pigs was the disastrous result.
Jack Kennedy did inherit the Bay of Pigs scenario. He had made certain pledges during the campaign. He had chided Nixon for not being tough enough on Castro, and he was determined to show that he was a tough guy that wasn't going to tolerate this dictator 90 miles offshore.
Promises had been made by the administration, by the Kennedy administration, and by the preceding Eisenhower administration that the invasion would proceed under certain circumstances. And when that vow was broken, I only interpreted it on the part of Mr. Kennedy as a failure of nerve.
He was scared because Khrushchev says, don't do this or we're going to do that. You know, so he didn't do it, and he deserted the Bay of Pigs. I was involved in the Bay of Pigs. Got a lot of people, friends of mine, that were killed in the Bay of Pigs. And I resent that. Don't play political games with me. I'm a military man. I'm a soldier. I go fight. But damn it, if I risk my ass out there and I'm getting shot at, I don't want some stupid-ass politician to go ahead and make deals behind my back where my people, or maybe myself, are going to get killed. I don't like that. After the Bay mines that were killed in the Bay of Pigs. And I resent that. Don't play political games with me. I'm a military man. I'm a soldier. I go fight. But damn it, if I risk my ass out there and I'm getting shot at, I don't want some stupid-ass politician to go ahead and make deals behind my back where my people, or maybe myself, are going to get killed. I don't like that.
Boy, I wonder who killed Kennedy, huh? It's just a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma, guys. We'll never figure it out.
After the Bay of Pigs, John F. Kennedy angrily said that he was going to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces. I'd like you to respond to that.
I think that for him to have said that was probably a way of disguising from himself the fact that he himself was responsible for the fiasco at the Bay of Pigs. And I'm sure that that's something that haunted him for the rest of his days.
Gee, I wonder who killed Kennedy. I guess we'll never figure it out. It's just too hard. It's just too hard to figure out.
E. Howard Hunt, the former CIA agent and author of some 56 books, has allegedly been tied to a plot to assassinate President Kennedy in 1963. The allegations were made in the Liberty Lobby's publication Spotlight. The article was written by another former CIA agent, Victor Marchetti.
It's the repetition of lies is what is so burdensome and so agonizing to someone in my position who went through, just finishing now, 10 years of Watergate.
The defense alleges the article did not say Hunt was part of a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy, but rather that the purpose of the article was to expose a CIA plot to tie Hunt to the Kennedy assassination.
I think the article's clear about that. At no time do we make any affirmative statements about Mr. Hunt's status or things that he did or didn't do. It's merely that the CIA was going to do these things. As it turns out, they didn't, and we hope they didn't do it because of our article.
Hunt spent the day on the witness stand reciting his resume of covert operations for the CIA and how he got involved in Watergate. His wife is also expected to testify in an attempt to show how the article about Hunt's involvement with the Kennedy assassination hurt their family life. Robert Gilmartin, Channel 4 News.
Oh, more on that later. I guess we'll never figure it out, guys. I guess we'll never figure it out. It's not like Frank Sturgis was threatening somebody to keep their mouth shut about him being in Dallas.
Frank Sturgis is accused of aggravated harassment and coercion of Marita Lorenz. Ms. Lorenz testified late this summer to congressional investigators that she accompanied Lee Harvey Oswald, Sturgis, and 4 other Cubans to Dallas, only a few days before the assassination of President John Kennedy. Sturgis has denied making that trip. Marita Lorenz, a New York City resident, complained to police that Sturgis made threatening phone calls to keep her from testifying before the House Assassinations Committee. Ms. Lorenz is a former undercover agent for the FBI and the CIA, as well as allegedly a one-time lover of Fidel Castro. In Miami, Jan Sturgis says her husband and Marita Lorenz have been close friends for 20 years. She says he went to New York City yesterday morning to discuss a movie being planned on the life of Ms. Lorenz. The plane ticket, she says, was paid for by Marita Lorenz's agent. Jan Sturgis claims her husband never went to Dallas.
Did your husband have any associations with Oswald?
None whatsoever.
So he did not make a trip to Dallas?
He absolutely did not make a trip to Dallas in November of 1963.
But Marita Lorenz has told investigators that they did go to Dallas and that she and Sturgis were part of a 30-member guerrilla organization formed by the CIA in 1960. Ana Asqui, Channel 4 News.
Sturgis goes on to say that the decision to politically ruin Nixon was made after Nixon demanded to see CIA files on the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and, most importantly, the file on the assassination of President Kennedy.
Several times the president asked Mr. Helms for the file, and Mr. Helms refused direct order from the President of the United States.
Why? What good would that do Richard Nixon to get those files?
I believe that Nixon would have uncovered the true facts that had been covered up for many years about the assassination of the president. It would take the heat off of him on Watergate.
Do you think that Richard Nixon was ever in any physical danger?
Yes, absolutely. He's lucky he didn't get killed. He's lucky he didn't get assassinated like President Kennedy got assassinated.
Boy, I wonder who killed Kennedy. I guess we'll never know. We'll never figure it out. It's just too complicated. A mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma. So let's back up, collect ourselves, and understand what we're hearing. So Frank Sturgis, American badass, CIA operative. He trains this woman, grooms her, brainwashes her, slaps her the fuck around, and abuses her and tells her that she's shit without the CIA and you better go fucking kill Fidel Castro, you goddamn bitch. Brainwashes her to go fucking kill Fidel Castro because she's his like lover. Then later on, he's making threatening phone calls to her. Bitch, you better shut the fuck up about talking about us being in fucking Dallas with a bunch of people with fucking guns in a plot to fucking kill Kennedy. Shut the fuck up, bitch. Nothing to see here, right, folks? Nothing to see here. I mean, it's shit. It's not like Frank Sturgis, American badass. It's not like he was training anti-Castro Cuban exile guerrilla fighters to go fucking kill Fidel Castro till the day he fucking died in the 90s or anything. No. Shut the fuck up, Spirit. It's not like any of that shit happened.
Eyewitness News has learned the anti-Castro paramilitary camp in the Everglades has had a visit from federal agents for the second time in less than a week. Customs agents went in last week and seized 45 assault rifles. I-Team reporter Rad Berkey broke the story of the secret camp last month, and tonight, Rad has the latest chapter.
These FBI agents work undercover and didn't want their faces shown as they entered the Democratic National Unity Party's training camp hidden deep within Collier County. But the I-Team has learned that the agents wanted to talk to Camp Commander Frank Sturgis about assault rifles. It was just last Friday when U.S. Customs agents seized 45 AK-47 assault rifles like this one, displayed for the I-Team by party leaders at the group's Miami headquarters. And the I-team has since learned that at least one of the rifles seized by customs from the camp had been converted to fire fully automatic, and that could be a violation of federal firearms law. And this group, the guns, and federal agents have had an even longer history than just this week. We've also learned the weapons seized from the camp might include guns seized once before from the group by the FBI in January of last year. All but 4 of those guns had just been returned to the camp by the FBI earlier this year. Sources tell us 4 weapons were kept because of improper documentation. Now, the FBI won't say what happened during their visit to the camp, but federal agents from the Bureau, Customs, and ATF have all been paying close attention to the camp ever since a boatload of weapons was found last month off the coast of Cuba. One of the men on that boat had been trained at that camp. He is now facing federal charges. Dwight?
Red, now that they know they have federal attention, you would think the guys at the camp would be a little more secretive as opposed to being very open about what they're doing and what they're up to.
Well, Dwight, as you know, they have maintained all along they are doing nothing wrong out there. They continue to say that even the weapons that were seized, the ATF or FBI are all going to find out that those weapons are legal and perfectly registered. So they don't seem to feel that they are doing anything wrong. We'll see what happens when the gun reports come back.
Brad Berkey, thank you for that live update from our newsroom.
Yeah, so Frank Sturgis running a paramilitary camp in 1993 till the day he fucking died. Boy, I wonder how they killed Kennedy. Wonder how they got those guns. Guess we'll never know. Yeah, whole paramilitary training and all. Guess we'll never figure it out. I think this deserves one of these.
Weird.
So who did Frank Sturgis blame for killing Kennedy? He said Fidel Castro did it. Boy, it's not like Frank Sturgis would have any vested interest in keeping a narrative going that Fidel Castro was behind killing Kennedy. It's not like he'd have any vested interest as a CIA operative in these anti-Castro Cuban fucking paramilitary group. No. So I'm gonna save you even more time. If you want to go down the JFK rabbit hole, if you ever see Russia did it or the KGB did it, just fucking don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. I think you see where that rabbit hole will take you. It's just a waste of fucking time. Don't even go there. So, back to Watergate. E. Howard Hunt, while the FBI is looking into this whole thing, he's blackmailing Richard Nixon. He's telling Nixon, give me money or I'm gonna tell fucking people about this shit. Open the whole pigs thing. And Nixon is happy to oblige, and Nixon's giving him money. Which should tell you that Nixon is afraid of this guy. Remember that quote that we read earlier? That Hunt guy, he knows too much. You pick that scab, boy, it'll open a whole can of worms. So Nixon's afraid of Hunt. So he's paying him blackmail money. But then a funny thing happens. E. Howard Hunt's wife dies in a plane crash carrying $10,000 in cash. Fancy that. I think that definitely deserves one of these.
Weird.
Weird.
And today marks 50 years since a United Airlines jet crashed on approach to Midway Airport, slamming into a Chicago neighborhood just southeast of the airport. The Boeing 737 crashed into several homes near Lawndale and 70th Place, as well as neighboring streets. You see this video here, file video from 1972. 43 of the 61 passengers on board that plane died. 2 others died on the ground. The homes in that area have all been rebuilt in the half-century since that tragedy.
NTSB investigators determined the crash was caused by the captain's failure to exercise positive flight management, essentially pilot error. But many believe the crash was part of a nefarious political plot because of this passenger.
Dorothy Hunt happened to be the spouse of E. Howard Hunt, one of the people being investigated for the Watergate break-in.
E. Howard Hunt was one of the so-called plumbers who broke into the Watergate Hotel to bug Democratic offices on behalf of President Richard Nixon. Whitehouse tapes captured the moment Nixon was told about the crash that killed Hunt's wife.
I just got a terribly tragic bit of news. That plane crash, Howard Hunt's wife was on it. And his wife is dead? Yes, sir. She was killed in that plane crash in Chicago. Oh, my God.
Fueling suspicion was the fact Dorothy Hunt was carrying $10,000 cash on the doomed plane. And conspiracy theorists believe she also had a Watergate smoking gun.
That she had in her possession certain documents that would implicate President Richard Nixon in the Watergate break-in and ultimately lead to the downfall of his presidency. And so she needed to be taken out, and all the other passengers who died in the flight were simply collateral damage.
Of course, none of that proved to be true.
None of it's true. Don't look here. When's the media ever misled you, right?
Weird. Weird.
Weird. His wife is dead? My God.
Sock it to me?
What? What? How could this be? Weird. So, E. Howard Hunt has to testify about this whole Watergate thing. What was his defense? Why he do that thing he do?
I would have to answer Senator Talmadge in 2 parts. First, I became engaged because I believed that the activities that were proposed to me had the sanction of the highest authorities in our country. Secondly, my 26-year record of service to this country predisposed me to accept orders and instructions really without question, without debate.
See if I understand your reply. First, you thought the end justified the means, and second, if high authority ordered it, you thought it was your duty to obey. Does that answer it?
Sir, I would
Senator Talmadge, may I intervene and suggest that the first part of your question, in my humble opinion, was not an exact paraphrase of what he said. I at least didn't hear him make any suggestion that in his opinion the end justified the means.
I certainly don't want to put words in his mouth, but I understood the answer to be similar there too. I want the witness to answer in his own words.
As a general rule, Senator Talmadge, I do not believe that the end justifies the means.
You'd been trained to instantly obey orders of high authority, and that was the reason you did what you did.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, no further questions.
I was just following orders. Yes, mein Senator. I was just following orders. The orders came from the highest level of government, and they had the highest sanctions, and I was just following orders. If you can put a bugging device in the Democratic headquarters, Then you can put a bugging device in space? So when E. Howard Hunt got old, he made a deathbed confession to the JFK assassination. But like most things involving the JFK conspiracy, you should just consider it kind of questionable and bullshit. It will mislead you. Boy, a CIA operative misled you on his deathbed confession? What? So who did E. Howard Hunt say was behind the Kennedy assassination? Who did he say was the top of the pyramid? The guy who dreamed it all up, the man with the plan. Who did he think was behind the whole thing? E. Howard Hunt, named Lyndon Johnson, LBJ. He was the guy. He was the man at the top of the plan. And if you watch this show, what do we know about LBJ around here? LBJ, Golda Meir. Golda Meir, LBJ. LBJ, Golda Meir. Golda Meir, LBJ. LBJ, Golda Meir, Golda Meir, LBJ, same person. Prove me wrong. Show me a picture of them in the same room together. So if you hear anybody saying that LBJ is the top of the JFK assassination pyramid, you should also consider that misleading obfuscation bullshit and look the other way. Did LBJ stand to benefit from it? Yes, absolutely. Was LBJ an opportunist who took advantage of it? Oh yeah, absolutely. Did he have guys inside of the plan? Oh, for sure. But was he at the top? No way. We'll talk about LBJ and his role and his people in another episode. We got to talk about Nixon, because the Watergate hearings were a fucking shit show. Haldeman has to turn over these tapes of him being told by Nixon to go pressure the CIA to slow the investigation by the FBI. The whole thing's a goddamn shit show.
Did you meet with the president after you listened to that tape and make a report to him?
No, I did not.
Did you make any written report to him?
Pardon me?
Did you make any written report to the president?
Only by turning the notes over to him. I did not expand on the notes.
Now, this committee had a subpoena, which was a continuing subpoena to you, to turn over such things as tapes, notes, things of that matter. Why did not you turn your notes over, or the tape to this committee, which is in your possession? The subpoena specifically called for you to turn over tapes that were in your custody or possession, and you had that tape in your custody and possession and did not turn it over.
I did not consider it to be in my custody. It was handed to me to listen to for the president and report back to the president, which I did.
You had it in your hands?
Yes, sir.
You had it in your home?
Yes, sir.
Subpoenas are issued to people who have such things, although they don't own them, and they're required to honor them. But I won't argue the law with you, but you did not, at least based on our subpoena, turn that tape over to us on our subpoena.
I was not aware that I was under any such obligation, and perhaps counsel can advise me as to whether I was.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like the gentleman to point out where there is any continuing subpoena.
Well, the subpoena calls for the witness to turn over to this committee all items that he has in his possession.
Where is this? Read the subpoena, Mr. Dash. Don't paraphrase it like you have other things here this morning.
You have the subpoena in your
hand. I have the subpoena, and it's issued to produce on the 4th of May all materials and documents listed on the attached sheet in your possession, custody, and control. Did we have any further subpoenas?
No, you did not.
Is this a continuing subpoena?
Yes, this Mr. Haldeman has been under continuing subpoena to appear here.
Is this subpoena a continuing subpoena?
Well, I don't think we can argue the law, Mr. Wilson.
You know it is.
I would say that he said documents, and I would say that the president says that he's taped all documents. He says that himself.
Mr. Chairman, we're not concerned with subject matter. We're concerned with time and what kind of a subpoena this is. And it's unfair for Mr. Dash to give the impression that there is a continuing subpoena on us. There isn't.
Well, I don't think...
I request that you withdraw it.
Well, Mr. Wilson, every witness has been subpoenaed. It's been understood his subpoena continues until this investigation...
Mr. Wilson...
That is not the law, sir, even of the Congress of the United States or the courts.
Well, I say that is the understanding.
It isn't the understanding with me.
Well, I'm not responsible for your understanding.
So, understand that the public image of this is a goddamn shit show. But that's just the part that the public sees. I think you can see already if you start pulling on these threads and you open that scab, it'll blow the whole Bear Pigs thing. So Haldeman and Ehrlichman and a bunch of other people have to resign. And Nixon ends up having to resign, but the background of this is that Nixon has to resign. This can't go to trial. If this goes to trial, it'll blow the whole Bear Pigs thing. Nixon's gotta resign. So, Nixon is forced to resign.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
Richard Nixon peace signs off into history. Peace, Richard Nixon. Peace out. But this can't go to any kind of a trial or anything. I think you can see why. You start pulling that scab, you're gonna open up the whole Bear Pigs thing. And in the interest of national security, can't have that. So, Gerald Ford pardons Nixon. So, what was the reason that Gerald Ford gave for pardoning Nixon amid all of this scandal?
I talked to Phil Buchan, my counsel, and I said, can I pardon him? And he took a day or two to look at the options. He came back and said yes. And I decided that was the only way I could get rid of Mr. Nixon's problems that were taking 25% of my daily time, so I could spend 100% of my time on the problems of 230 million Americans.
You never felt manipulated in that time?
None whatsoever. I made the sole decision, and I have to say, most of my staff disagreed with me, but I was absolutely convinced it was the right thing to do, and I'm even more convinced today, Hugh.
So Gerald Biden here, pardon Nixon, because it's taken up too much of my goddamn time. I got other things to worry about. So he pardons Nixon. But was that the reason that Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon? Because it was just eating up too much of his goddamn time, and he had to focus on other things? Or was it something else? Was it the fact that Gerald Ford was on the Warren Commission, which looked into the assassination of President Kennedy? What? Bum, bum, bum. Oh yeah, that thing. That little thing. Gerald Ford just happened to be on the Warren Commission. So who better to just shut this little thing up? Just wrap it up nice and tight and throw it away. Nothing to see here, folks. Richard Nixon did nothing wrong. Don't look any more into this. Who better to do that than Gerald Ford? Gerald Ford, who made a key change in the Kennedy death report. Bum, bum, bum. Gerald Ford changed ever so slightly the Warren Commission's main sentence on the place of where a bullet entered JFK's body when he was killed in Dallas. Mr. Ford's change strengthened the commission's conclusion that a single bullet passed through Kennedy and wounded Governor Connally, a crucial element in the commission's finding that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole gunman. Mr. Ford, who was a member of the commission, wanted a change to show that the bullet entered Kennedy, quote, at the back of his neck. At the back of his neck. Rather than his uppermost back, as the commission originally wrote. Ford said that today, the change was intended to clarify meaning, not alter history. My changes had nothing to do with a conspiracy theory, he said, yelling at a cloud in a telephone interview. But his editing was seized upon by conspiracy theorists who reject the commission's conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Gerald Ford on the Warren Commission changed uppermost back wound, a gunshot wound to the uppermost back. He changed it to at the back of his neck. I'm sure that that's just a slight change. It has no bearing on reality. And I'm sure that if you look at the evidence, if you look at the jacket that he's wearing, oh, wait, I don't know. What do you guys think? Back of the neck or uppermost back? Bottom of the neck uppermost back. What difference does it make? Minor alteration. That's the end of that. Nothing to see here. Gerald Ford pardons Nixon. But what else happens? What's the fallout of Watergate? A lot.
Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight?
Well, of course.
Are you sorry?
Of course, Howard Hunt, he went to prison.
Does your memory
And Frank Sturgis, he went to prison.
to a bright summer day?
G. Gordon Liddy, he went to prison. And Jameson McCord, he went to prison. John Ehrlichman, he went to prison. H.R. Haldeman,
Shall I come back?
he went to prison.
Tell me, dear, are you lost?
John Dean, the White House legal counsel, he went to prison.
I wonder.
Dwight Chapin, he went to prison too.
You know, someone said
And Bud
the
Crow,
world's a stage and each must play a part.
he went to prison. In all, over 40 members of the Nixon administration were indicted or went to prison, and Elvis, the king of rock and roll. On August 16th, 1977, Elvis was found dead on his bathroom floor in Memphis, Tennessee. In his system were the following drugs: morphine,
And I had no cause to die.
Quaaludes, Valium, Nordazepam, Ethinamate, Placidil, Pentobarbital, Phenobarbital, and Butabarbital.
Are you lonesome? Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I come back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight?
Thank you. Thank you very much. But the other fallout is that that's all Nixon's administration is remembered for. And if you're sitting here thinking, damn, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell who I should admire and who I should vilify in this story. And I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to leave that up for you to decide. Heroes, villains, good guys, bad guys. I'm the guy with the wiretap. But I think Nixon in general is underappreciated. Certainly in foreign policy. Let's be realistic here. Would you rather have the Nixon administration with Henry Kissinger running our foreign policy, even from the grave, or the nitwit clown world people we have in charge now? You'd rather have them, realistically. Let's put it that way. The grown-ups. At least when people were fucking grown-ups. right? They had national interests and things. Was Nixon perfect? No. Is any presidency or is any administration perfect? No. Did he make boo-boos? Yeah, of course. Did he lie? Yeah. Did he try to slow down the investigation into this? Yeah. Oh, what would you do? And I'm gonna pose that to you. Let's talk about this for a minute. What would you do? You're Nixon. You've just been elected president. You've got your Henry Kissinger, you've got your foreign policy advisors. You've just been handed the Vietnam War. What are you gonna do? Well, we shouldn't be there in the first place. Sure. But that's not realistic. The grown-ups have to figure out, what are we going to do? What is the best way out of this fucking quagmire we've created for ourselves? So, you get handed the Vietnam War. What are you gonna do? How would you fucking end it? You can't just pull up and go, oh no, we're gonna just pull up all of our bases and take all of our troops back home. Bye. That doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that in reality. So what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to end the Vietnam War when you've been handed it? Well, Nixon expanded the Vietnam War, man. Lyndon Johnson might have been responsible for like all of this fucking bullshit, but Nixon was the one who expanded it into Laos and Cambodia, man. Let's talk about that. So what's going on is we're losing a massive amount of casualties, and this war is dragging on. And the problem is that every time we try and go kill these guys, they just sneak up the Ho Chi Minh Trail back up into Laos and Cambodia where we can't kill them. And that's where their supply lines are coming from. So if you want to stop the war quickly, you bomb their supply lines, which are in Laos and Cambodia. That's just where they are. It's what Johnson should have done at the beginning of the war if he wanted to speedily end it, but I think you know that they didn't want that. Or else they would have done that. So Nixon expanded the Vietnam War. Man, doesn't check out for me, man. Sometimes you just have to make fucking amoral decisions in foreign policy because it's what's best for national defense. If you want to speedily get this war the fuck over with. Was it the best decision? No. No, but I think Nixon gets underestimated for his understanding of foreign policy. Let's talk about this. Is not his finest moment. We say it with the benefit of hindsight. We can look at it now and go, yeah, opening the door to China. What are you thinking? What are you thinking, Richard Nixon? Do you not watch this show?
Don't trust China. China is asshole.
What are you thinking? That's Chairman Mao. We hate Chairman Mao. Don't trust China. China's asshole. We have the benefit of hindsight there, that now we can look upon that and go, wow, we started a really toxic relationship with China through that. But let's understand why Nixon did that. Why Nixon opened the door to relations with China. It was a political move, and it was a political move to split the communist world, because as soon as Nixon went to China, it opened the door to Russia, and now he's meeting with Brezhnev. He took advantage of an uneasy alliance between China and the Soviet Union. They were tense allies at the time, and Nixon took advantage of the fact that they were tense allies, and so building those relationships as he did, it split the communist world in half and made them have to focus on their national interests as opposed to global communism. It was a political move against global communism to split the two most powerful communist entities in half. And Reagan gets a lot of credit for ending the Cold War by just military armament buildup and outspending the Soviet Union until it collapsed. Reagan gets credit for that, but none of that could have happened if Nixon hadn't split China and the Soviet Union. Because otherwise, the Soviet Union would have had an ally in China, right? So, it's a lot more complicated than you think. That's the way geopolitics are. Anyway. So back to our original question, though. What does Watergate have to do with our whole bird of pigs thing, the JFK assassination? Turns out a lot. A lot. Old tricky dick. But look. It's not like Nixon was in Dallas the day before the Kennedy assassination or anything. It's not like anything like that ever happened.
My present estimate, on the basis of my own brief visit here and mail I've been receiving, is that President Kennedy's stock is considerably lower today than it was in Texas in 1960 when I ran against him for the presidency. So I think there are a variety of reasons. Perhaps the issues of 1960 have been reversed. As you recall, then we were going to do something about Castro in Cuba. We were going to do something about American prestige abroad, and also about sort of permanent unemployment. We find that on all of these issues there's been no action. And in addition to that, we find that despite the fact that President Kennedy has one of the largest majorities in Congress of any president in history, it's one of the poorest percentage records of accomplishment in history. So these things, I think, have had their effect in Texas. And another reason I think perhaps that President Kennedy may be weaker in Texas today than he was in the campaign of '60 as of this time is because Lyndon Johnson's stock is not as high in Texas, at least from what I've seen, as it was. In 1960, Lyndon was a help. In 1964, he might not be a help.
Weird. Weird.
Guys, thank you very much for coming out. Wow, that was quite a ride. Boy, that Watergate, Bay of Pigs, Kennedy assassination, we'll never figure it out. It's just too hard. I hope you had a good time. I did. I'll see you when I see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And guys, until next time, in the pursuit of truth, trust no one. Good night.